everybody. Welcome to another edition of Cruise Ship Explorers. We have a great guest this week. Her name is Tanya Roberts. She's not only an amazing entertainer, singer, but she's as well a cruise director, so she wears many hats. Rachel, what do we need to tell our viewers that they need to do if they want to see more?
Wow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell because you certainly don't want to miss any future episodes. And I am super excited because being a cruise director, I think is one of the hardest jobs on the ship. So I got to hear this.
And don't forget, pop back each week because we're going to have a new episode. So if you like and subscribe, the channel will get notified. And what do you say we get going, Rachel?
Yeah.
Let's go. Hi, and welcome to Cruise Ship Explorers. I'm Mike and...
I'm Rachel.
And today we have an extremely special guest, Tanya Roberts.
Hi, Mike, Rachel. Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I love that you were doing this. This is such an exciting venture. Yeah.
We're so excited to have you, and thank you for doing it. Your background is just so amazing. And
it's not like I'm a singer or I'm a dancer. This girl's like triple threat, quadruple threat, quintuple threat, if that's even something. Yeah.
My wine tasting skills. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Well, actually, and I also have an obsession with fascinators. Speaking of wearing hats. Yes. I wear them both literally and figuratively. Yeah.
Oh my God. That's amazing. So, I mean, we love, jumping right in and, obviously you've been an entertainer for so many years. But how did you get started in the cruise industry? From being on land to being on the cruise ship, I think, me personally, I think it's a lot more demanding from the standpoint of everything you have to go through to not only be accepted to be, whether it's a cruise director or a cruise entertainer, but just the everyday life. So give us a little background about that.
Yeah. Well, I fell in love with the ships quite young, cruising with my family. My mother was born in Toronto, but her father worked for a company that required him to split his time between Toronto and South America. So she was traveling by ship quite a bit from an early age between Toronto down to Caracas, to Cartagena and back. And so when I was in high school, I was about 16. My sister was, she would have been 12. My mother decided to take us on a family cruise, and she wanted to take us to all the ports of call that she used to go to when she was young, where she lived, and show a lot of her history. And so that was my first foray into ships. And it was there that I fell in love with, that really unique community aspects that I find you can only find on ships. I mean, that moment, as cruisers, that moment you step onto a ship and you're just immediately embraced in this floating community, unlike anything quite you find on land. And so, of course, though, this was a pretty run-of-the-mill ship, on the larger size. And, the entertainment tends to be very pop music oriented, a lot of song and dance spectacle and musical reviews and things. And at that point, I was going to an arts high school and I was moving into opera. And so I looked at this entertainment and I thought, oh, how amazing it would be to perform on a vessel. But I don't think there's anything for me. They want pop singers. I'm a classical vocalist. And so I just sort of filed it away as something that, maybe, but I didn't think it would ever happen.
Right.
And then back in, this would have been late 2017, I saw an audition notice in New York for a vessel putting on the first opera cast ever at sea.
Wow.
And I was like, what? What
That's a sign.
This is a sign. Exactly.
Yeah,
I was like, what is this?
exactly.
Never seen of a gig. Never.
Yeah, I've never seen operatic productions on a cruise ship before.
No. And this was with Azamara. So Azamara was experimenting with a new entertainment model. So they decided that on the Azamara journey, they were going to put an opera cast of 4 vocalists plus a pianist. And then meanwhile, over on the Azamara Quest, they were going to experiment with a theater cast and put on a group, of actors. So I went to a monstrous cattle call in New York, and
those are always fun, right?
We love the 5:30 wake up, the 7 a.m. lineup, scene at 1 p.m.
Exactly.
Oh gosh, but I remember there were so many sopranos. Of course, there's so many of us, and they were going in there, and singing all these glorious high notes and beautiful lines and perfect legato and all of this. And I was like, I mean, everyone's so good. And I remember standing out in the hallway going, how am I going to distinguish myself? How can I go in there and have any chance of booking this? So I broke all the rules. So I went in there, and the number one thing you do not do at an opera audition is yodel. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go in and I'm going to yodel.
Oh my gosh.
Little did I know, though. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Are you a
No,
yodeling
I was just going to
fan
say,
too?
what kind of looks did you get?
Well, here's the thing, and I had no idea. It was sheer coincidence that the stage director of this particular set of production shows that was being put together, huge yodeling fan.
No.
It was sheer coincidence. Like, has all these YouTube channels where he's amassed, like the best of yodeling, in the interwebs, Yeah. And so
That's
I went
meant
in there.
to be.
It was meant to be, and they even went so far as to put the yodeling into one of the shows. So yeah, went through the callback process, etc. But ended up being the soprano in a cast of 4: soprano, mezzo, tenor, and baritone. And so this was December 2017, and then we started building in early 2018. I flew to Miami. And at this point, Azamara was still part of Royal Caribbean. So all the shows were built at the Royal Caribbean production facilities in North Miami. Fabulous, fabulous place. And so we built an abridged version of the opera Carmen. We built a production show, like a review of top opera hits. And then we built a production show that was a review of a lot of golden age musical theater, a little operetta, kind of looking at the intersection of opera and theater. Yeah, and then I shipped out to Singapore in March 2018, and I've never looked back.
Oh my God.
And that's the thing with auditions, is that so many, even just traditional actors and actresses, you do everything you are told to do by your agents, by everybody around you. These are how auditions go, and you are like textbook, and oftentimes it just takes going against the grain or just doing something that is so uniquely you that gets you noticed. And it's so frustrating because, you're with all these people, and some people just audition, and it's an endless thing of auditioning, and you don't get anything. And it's like, I'm doing everything right. It's hard not to compare yourself to other people. And it's like, why is this person getting the role? They're very good, obviously, but I sing just as well. I move just as well. What is going on here? And so I always encourage people, just no matter what, just be uniquely you, because if anything, they'll remember you, good, bad, or otherwise.
Exactly.
100%.
And for me being on the...
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I always say the number one thing you can bring into an audition room is you in its most authentic form. I mean, because that is what you have. That is your strongest selling point, And if you go in there and you are true to yourself and your talent, whether you get the gig or not, it's so much easier to accept whatever outcome it is, because it is representative of you having shown you, and if it's right, it's right. If it's not, that's okay. You were true to yourself, and that is very powerful. Yeah,
exactly.
What were you going to say, Mike?
Me being on the other side, on the music production side, and doing those auditions, that's what I look for. Of course, you have to have the talent, but when somebody comes in the room, they light it up with their own personality. I'm like, okay, that's just a little bit different than everybody else. I'm going to go with that person. And that's what I look for. And that's why I understand exactly where you're coming from. Yeah. So that brings me to my next question. What do you love about singing on cruise ships? Because obviously you probably did a lot of land stuff. So what for you makes that whole experience different?
Oh, gosh, there are a number of things. The first thing that comes to mind is that, as an opera singer and, as a classically trained vocalist, one of the challenges, but also one of the great joys of performing out at sea is that you're performing for a really diverse demographic of people in terms of age, what countries they're from, what languages they speak, their musical tastes. This is not like when I step onto an opera stage on land And the people in that audience have bought tickets specifically to see that show. And hopefully, I mean, they like that style of music. They're there because they want to be there. They know what they're getting themselves into. Whereas your audience on a cruise ship, I mean, is a captive audience, you know?
Yep.
And, you know, and so then you as an entertainer are in a fascinating balancing act of having to acknowledge where your strengths are and what lights you up as an artist, but also keeping in mind that you want to try to appeal to as many people as possible. And I could go out there and do a 45-minute show of, you know, art song and I'd really hit the 19th century Germanic repertoire, you know, and I probably have 2 people in there who were like super into it and everyone else would be terribly confused. So, you know, as an artist, I mean, it's forced me to expand the genres that I perform a ton. I mean, I now sing a lot of pop music on board that I would have never gone near before. And, you know, and I say that I still very much acknowledge that, you know, my strength is in classically oriented music, but I like that I can get up there and sing like Dancing in the Streets, you know, and have a great time and bring people joy in yet another way. Yeah.
Yeah,
and it works both ways, because not only is your audience so diverse, both culturally, location wise, but the cast is too. So if you're in an ensemble, whether it be theatrical or playing in a band, communicating with them, how do those rehearsals go? Obviously, I imagine you rehearse on land first, but coming up with a communication system, a shorthand, if you will, while you're on stage and having to bridge all of these cultural differences.
Yeah. Well, and actually, like as a singer, so as a vocalist, whether you're in a cast or whether you're a performing cruise director or whether you're coming as a guest entertainer, you also don't get any rehearsal time with the musicians until you're on board. Right. And very often, too, you know, as a guest entertainer in particular, you get your rehearsal day of. You get maybe 1-2 hours in the late afternoon, early evening before you do your show, likely twice that evening. You know, and so it requires like efficiency. Yeah,
for our audience, one question that I see a lot in the comment section is, what is the difference between what they call a guest entertainer and then I guess it would be a full-time entertainer? Is that somebody that just gets a shorter contract? Maybe you can explain that to our audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, because there are 2 very different tracks to performing out at sea. 3 if you count the cruise direction, but just for this, just focusing on performance-only tracks.
Yeah.
So if you're a cast member, you're likely involved in quite a lengthy contract. I mean, 6 months is pretty standard. Could be 4. I've seen up to 11 months. Personally, I've done between 3 and 6 as a cast member. And so you're in residence on the ship for this entire duration. You have a set of shows that you do. Every single cruise, they come back. Versus a guest entertainer is someone who typically comes to the vessel for up to a week at a time. They're responsible for 2 45-minute shows. And these are shows that they typically do as a solo artist and then accompanied by the band on board. And so the guest entertainer role on a vessel is really to provide variety to the entertainment offerings on board. So it's not just the in-house, you know, cast performing every single night. And what's great too about guest entertainers is that there is a lot of variety. They could be a vocalist, you know, they could be a musician, they could be a comedian, they could be a magician, a hypnotist. You know, so it's really great for expanding the guest experience of entertainment on board. They're going to get a little taste of so many different things, and particularly on longer voyages. Yeah.
It's just, I think it breaks it up a little bit. And it gives a little more variety during, say, a 7, day, night cruise. You get that extra. They fit it in, and they break up the other shows. Yeah, we've seen that before. But I see that a lot in the comments, and they don't understand the difference. But thanks for explaining that. That's awesome.
Sure.
You know, with some of the shows, for me, it's like, do you have any crazy moments that only happen during shows that maybe you can share that makes it a little? I mean, I'm sure. I don't think we have enough time for all those moments, but but maybe you could just share like 1 or 2 that makes on a ship, what's different? What would be a little bit different during those shows for you as
Yeah.
an entertainer?
Well, the number one obvious thing is that you were performing on a moving vessel on the water.
How's that? Yeah.
How's that? Sometimes you know how it is as a guest. I mean, some days it's just, crystal clear waters, smooth sailing. You barely
Right.
feel a thing, and then other days, yeah, you feel like you're on a sailing boat with, zero stabilization. And I remember when I first started this journey and being in an early rehearsal with my producer with the opera cast. And he said, okay, so number one thing, if you're out on that stage and it's really rocky, the worst thing you can do is like hunker down and try to keep yourself upright by like holding yourself. That's when you fall over. He said the trick is to pretend you're drunk. Yeah. And then you automatically, like, your body loosens up. You flow with the vessel. Yeah, it works.
That's
I mean,
gotta
it
be
may look a
fun.
little funny, but it's a lot of fun. Things I would
And
not
do
do on
they-
land.
Do they will they postpone a show if it's really too crazy out there on the water? They'll not.
I've been in that position as a cruise director. Not often, but I have had a few instances where I've had to completely cancel a show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly with my cast, and I have dancers. I mean, it's just not
course.
safe. Ships safety is number one, absolutely
Of
number
course.
one. Everything comes after that. And if I've got dancers, doing incredible lifts and jumps and things like that, and they go up and the ground is not below them where it was when they left it, you're just asking for injuries. And the other thing about this
Absolutely.
too, yeah, is that, from the guest experience side, I mean, a lot of the guests, if the cast is feeling the movement, the guests are too.
Oh my
and
God.
they're like,
And I'm sure you're playing to more of
you want to be.
a less audience,
Exactly.
Everybody's in the
like,
room.
Yeah, and I think of like on the Azamara vessels, the cabaret lounge, the main performance venue, is all the way forward on the vessel. I mean, it's deck 5, so it's not particularly high, but of course, the farther forward and the higher you go on a vessel, the more movement you feel. So one of the worst places you can be if you're sensitive to movement is in the front of the vessel, and no, just sometimes you just got to make the call, and it's okay.
And
you know
surprisingly,
what?
on a lot of ships, the theater is in the front. Like,
Yeah.
they're just designed that way. But luckily, exactly like you said, they're kind of like low. So
But they're low.
it helps to kind of like mitigate the situation.
Yeah.
So one thing
Yep.
that I'm curious about, and I've never really looked into the actual production side, but what makes like the cruise show different than a conventional show in a theater? Is there a major difference, or would you say they're very similar? I'm just curious because we've seen a lot of the shows.
This varies quite a bit by vessel and the size of the vessel because,
Sure.
I mean, honestly, like some of these monster ships, you look at Royal Caribbean and their production shows, and I mean, their technical levels and the flow and the kind of stage management they have in the wings and the space available to them, I mean, is akin to Broadway productions, West End.
Exactly.
I mean, if not even bigger, depending on the vessel. Versus, when Azamara, for instance, we're talking about a 700 passenger vessel, so much smaller venue. And so, whereas, so for me as a vocalist, when I'm performing with instrumentalists on land, I'm accustomed to having them, in a pit, in an orchestra pit, or, and not having the same proximity. I'm used to having a conductor on land, whereas on a ship, we're all on that stage together. That's the
Yeah.
space we got. We make it work. And I don't have the
Exactly.
luxury of someone out front conducting, keeping us together. There's always a bandmaster, in the midst. Often the pianist, not always. So, there's a lot of head nodding.
Of course,
a lot
yeah.
of like seatography,
A lot of looks, yeah.
a lot of looks. Depending
Yeah,
on your
no.
bandmaster, a sly mic that's going into the in-ear monitors,
Oh yeah, that's always fun. Yeah, I was just
Definitely.
you're curious like on the production, and now cruises have come like you just said such a long way with these giant. They're like, the new Royal Caribbean ship they launched. You see people, it's like the Cirque shows that you would see in Vegas or something like that. It's really they're bringing it to a different level. So
Yeah.
for you, You've been on different, ships. It probably changes, and you're also seeing probably a growth from ship to ship in different kind of the tech world and what they're using
Yes,
to back in
very
the
much.
day. That would lead me to my other question. Being a musician myself, Rachel's also a musician. What's it like working with musicians from like all over the place, different countries?
Oh, yeah.
How is that for you? Because
Oh, yeah.
that's being on land. Usually, if you're locked into whether it's a band or a show, you're probably going to be with the same musicians for a little bit. But
Yes.
from our understanding, it does change frequently on the cruise ships.
It does. And actually, depending what's going on in the world, it will change the demographic of your musicians quite a bit. This is something I've
Sure.
seen, particularly since the war in Ukraine began. I used to have a lot of Eastern European musicians, a lot of Ukrainians,
Sure.
which unfortunately is not so much the case anymore,
Yeah.
given the political situation.
course.
So right now I'm getting a lot of musicians from South America. And so
Wow.
but both sides of this are very cool in that I'm getting to work with musicians that are coming with very different backgrounds. They're bringing in different sets of skills, which then allows me as a singer to go, ooh, okay, I'm going to shift this rep. I'm going to do this. We can try this in this style. Just to give you an example, when I was working with a lot of Eastern European musicians, a lot of them would bring in a lot of classical training and experience in addition
Makes
to jazz.
sense.
Yeah, so it gave me a little more leeway to adapt, opera arias that would typically be played with 30 to 60 instruments down to, a band of 6, and they could hold their own. They did a great job. Versus like now that I'm working with more musicians from South America, they're bringing in such a rich heritage and experience with all the Latin music and rhythms. And so suddenly I'm able to go, okay, let's take this song and like just change up the style. Like I did this in a recent performance of So in Love from Cole Porter's Kiss Me Kate.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's become a jazz standard. And I was like, okay, you want to do it like a tango? Let's do it like a tango. And
how great is that you can switch that up? That's, I mean, from a musician standpoint, I love that. I love being able to have a musician that's so rich into different genres that you can just pull something out of your hat. And, it's just, and actually it's entertaining to you because you get to mix it up. It's not the same old, which is, that's amazing. So you enjoy that. You love that versus just,
Yeah, and
there's a lot of musicians that just like phone it in every night. And I think what I love about cruise performances versus land performances is that we can go to any bar. Some of the bar bands are like, hey, buddies, they get together and play, but you could tell that's all they play is just that genre. They're locked in a box. Whereas a cruise ship performer is usually at a different caliber because like you said, you don't get a lot of rehearsal time. So you're not getting on a ship learning how to play the song. You are expected to already know the song. And then you use that time to just kind of like, okay, how are we going to perform? Now it's the visual, of it. And I imagine someone coming in like, oh, hold on. What key is this in again? They're gone.
Exactly. And the other thing too about ships, because they're so fast paced, it creates this really intense creative petri dish. And because, of course, our mantra on ships is expect the unexpected. So what happens when my port is canceled when I was supposed to pick up my guest entertainer and suddenly we're doing a crossing on the Pacific and I'm down 2 nights of performances and suddenly we've got to build 2 new shows. I need a great team who can hustle and do that. And I've seen some really amazing shows come together in really short periods of time that have ended up being some of the favorite guest experiences.
That does happen. Sometimes the quick stuff just works. It's like writing a hit song. Sometimes they write it in 5 minutes versus months, so we get that. I love seeing that, that's awesome. So here's a question for you. You wear many hats. So being a cruise director, am I correct? And an entertainer, how do you handle that? Because from what I understand, you sometimes have to do that on the same contract, or you do that on the same contract.
I do.
Am I correct?
I do.
Right?
Oh, very much.
Right.
Very much.
So explain that to us, because that schedule's, let alone just being an entertainer on a cruise ship, the schedule is crazy. Tell us how that works.
Oh yeah, because now when I'm on land, like I feel life is so luxurious. I get like like the day off before I perform in the evening. Like what is that? Yeah, no, because of course working on a vessel, there are 0 days off, zero. And
Sure.
so in a role as a cruise director where I'm also expected to perform, I'm often performing after doing a full day's work, of
Right.
administration, I'm responsible for planning all the entertainments and activities on board, executing that, managing the entire department, of course, interacting with other departments, doing a lot of cross collaboration, and for all the inner workings of the vessel and what have you. So it requires great love
Oh,
of the job.
I mean, if I can just interrupt before,
Yeah.
how did you even go down that path? How did that happen for you?
Well, so it grew out of being in the opera cast. So basically, I did 2 contracts as a member of this opera cast, and then the company decided to go back to a more mainstream model.
Okay.
Which we totally get. Some guests thought that this opera cast was like the greatest thing they'd ever seen at sea, and then others were like, "I need Elton John." I totally get it.
Right. Yes.
And this is an important thing, of course, to note too. Is when you as a guest are on a vessel and you're consuming these shows, it's very often after you've had a long day in port. You've gone to dinner, maybe you've had a little too much to eat and drink. No judgment, like. Number one thing on ships, eat and
Of
drink.
course. Yeah.
And so, when it comes time to consume entertainment, easier is often better.
Yes.
There is something to be said about that, and opera is intense. Opera demands a lot from you. And I understand that this is not for everybody. I think it works really well, like, a couple nights of a longer voyage. That's where I come in. But as the primary entertainment on a ship, it's maybe a little much. So they moved back to a more mainstream model. Awesome. But I really wanted to continue working on board, and I was trying to figure out, how to do that. And likewise, the company wanted to keep me around, so they decided to train me to become an assistant cruise director. And then from there, I started, filling in here and there. And then from there, got promoted to becoming a cruise director. Yeah.
That's the position, that I admire the most is the cruise director. Because performers, for the most part, you have a set and it changes here and there. And people, especially to the lounges, once you start getting your itinerary, after the first, like probably the second day, I know Mike and I usually have the favorite entertainers. So we already start to follow them around, little fans.
Love that.
So that's like an audience, like a captive audience, like you said. They know what they're getting. The cruise director, you're walking into rooms. Sometimes it's an atrium. So, we've seen these done in hallways where the cruise director is like trying to hype people. Like basically you're the hype woman and getting people, especially on sea days where things can get kind of like, not monotonous, but people aren't going out, so you want to entertain them. And it's just like, you got to read the room real quick and almost like a comedian, start trying out material. So cruise ship director is the position I definitely respect, but fear a little bit the most. I wouldn't want to be in those shoes
Yeah,
for
me
sure.
neither. That's why I think I chose the drums. I can hide behind them and nobody sees me and I don't have to go to the front. But yeah, no, that's amazing. That was something I was very curious because, props to you because that's a tough gig. And a lot of people don't realize because a lot of people that come on a cruise, they just see you and you're doing your thing. They don't even understand what's involved to get people involved. So
what's when you have to cruise direct and perform on the same day, what's the typical schedule? Is it like cruise directing for the first 8 hours and then performing for like another 6 hours? Or do they break it up in between?
It varies. It depends whether it's a port day or if it's a sea day. Like a typical port day schedule for me, I'm in the office between 8 and 9 a.m. I'm working till, probably 1, 2 p.m., maybe like a half-hour window for like a little lunch in there. I typically don't do breakfast. I'm a coffee girl. And then I'll try to get out into the port for, 2, 3 hours. And then I'm back, I'm changing, and then I start getting into like cocktail hour events, being around the ship. And then if I'm performing that evening, then typically I'm going into a rehearsal, probably around 6, 7 o'clock, I'll schedule it for 2 hours, but if it's a show that I've done with the musicians, I can get it done in under an hour for sure.
Sure.
And then typically performing twice, like an 8:15 and a 9:30. And then after that, then, maybe make an appearance in a lounge, and then I'm getting room service dinner and passing out. I'm usually in bed by midnight and then up at 6:37.
And I know that the whole behind the scenes of, getting to hang out with your, fellow cast members or your friends on board has to be, a very strict schedule because you're constantly working,
Yeah.
I mean, sure, you get a day off, I'm sure, here and there, but
no days off. No days off.
Let me correct that.
Nope.
No days off, everybody. No days off.
No days off. Appreciate.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is something new for us because we had thought that, you would get a day off to go out and do whatever you needed. No days off. Forget about it. All right. What about, as far as, you're working on cruise ships and performing on cruise ships and doing what you do, how does that affect your overall career? That's because you have so much going on.
Yeah.
I looked into your Instagram. I'm going to say I stalked you a little bit, and
thanks. I'm flattered.
but it's amazing. I mean, like I was telling Rachel, I said, okay, she jumps out of planes, she hikes, she exercises, she teaches things online. I think I might have learned something about, not that I'm an Apple phone user, but about Apple apps, on your phone. It's really, your profile is just amazing. So for me, it's like, because you're working so much on the cruise ship, how does that affect your overall career? And, where do you see yourself, going? And what are you building towards?
Yeah. Well, I mean, cruise ships have diversified my career so much. And they've opened up seeing the world in a way that I never, ever thought. I mean, I've always been drawn to using music as a meaningful way to see the world. But then ships just exploded that. I just hit my 91st country. I'll hit the end of my next contract. I'll hit my 99th.
Wow! Congratulations to you.
Thanks.
We're gonna put a little thing up on this that 100 cling. That's amazing.
I've been thinking of what should the 100th be? Like if I do it while I'm on vacation, that I feel like it needs to be a country that has significant ties to the number 100, like the 100th country to be founded, or on the 100th parallel, or the 100th.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll figure that out.
I guess you'll know when you get there, right?
Yes, yes. If your viewers have any suggestions, I'm absolutely open to it.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about ships, and so I'm a bit of the unicorn in that I don't have a permanent regular position as a cruise director right now by design.
Right.
So I'm the one who floats around, the fleet, and I fill in when the rotation is funky or things come up with other cruise directors, like someone died, someone's getting married, etc. There's always stuff. So what it allows me in my career as a singer, it allows me to build in a lot of flexibility to stay active on land and at sea. And that because that can be one of the challenges. A typical cruise director contract, you're on for 4 months, you get 2 months off. And keeping in mind that those 4 months, you're not getting a single day off. So you finish, you're tired. You're tired.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and you need those 2 months to recuperate. You really do. And so it's very challenging then as a performer to kind of muster up, the energy to be like, oh, but there's this great, 1 month gig. I could do this musical and, So that the way I've built it allows me to have that kind of flexibility, and I love that. I love the diversity it brings to my career. The other side of it is that, what's really exciting about ships and the industry in general is that it's growing, it's expanding, versus unfortunately what I'm seeing in a lot of regional theater and opera in the US. It's starting to contract, and I have people reaching out to me all the time about how to become a performer on a ship. Yeah.
Oh,
in fact, so
amazing.
much so, I'm starting to write a book actually about how to perform
good for
at
you.
sea.
That's great.
Because people need to know, and from how do you find the auditions? what is a ship medical? What are they actually testing for? What's, my typical day on board to, as a vocalist, like what's Q Lab? How do I make background visuals for my shows? Like all the nitty gritty that it just really isn't anywhere. Nobody's really consolidated this and made it available. And I think people need to know. Because this
absolutely, especially the way the industry is growing. And I believe that it's such, the expansion of entertainers is needed. So like when you jump into it, even myself being on the land production side, I have no idea just from what I know, what I read online, but having somebody to teach that would be a great tool. So I'm suggesting you do that. That would be great.
Yeah,
and now you just add that to your hours,
I know.
I want to read it, so definitely let us know when it's out. No, because you're right. Whether you are a musician, a vocalist, the opportunities for performance is shrinking. So if you are not like, you can try and make it on social media and you know what a roll of the dice that is. But singing in venues, the opportunities are becoming less. Theater, ballet, even all of those are, like you said, shrinking. And there's this whole booming industry here that a lot of people don't even really think about or don't consider, because they picture like Granny's cruise ship where it's like the one guitar player, with a backing track. And it's so much more than that.
So much more. And this is one of the reasons I'm so excited you're doing this, because we're in a moment where I think it's really important to keep dispelling actually a lot of the taboos surrounding entertainment.
Absolutely.
That it's less than, that it's never going to be the quality of what you get on land. Far from it. Often it exceeds what you get on land,
It's so much better.
And people are starting to realize this, which is great. And
if you could just maybe tell our audience, just because I know they're fascinated by this, and this could be a whole nother interview, but if you can condense it, like the training process, like you just started to talk about that and how you applied for it and the medical and all. I know there's so much in order just to get accepted. And then once you go through all that just to get onto this ship, maybe you could just condense it down for our audience just to know what that's like.
Sure. Well, basically going back to the concept that the number one thing on ships is safety, number one.
Sure.
So irregardless of your position on board, whether you're there as a dancer, whether you're there as a cook, your number one role, in the eyes of the company is your safety job.
Sure.
Whatever the role that is. So if you're a performer, most likely, your roles are going to be in the muster station. You're going to be in a guest-facing position in the event of an emergency. So in order, though, to fulfill these roles, though, that requires a lot of training. So the number one thing is that every seafarer has to complete a medical. And it's a really extensive, thorough medical, because they want to make sure that in the event of an emergency and you're under a lot of duress and stress, are you going to be able to respond and help other people, not just yourself? That's really, really important.
Sure.
And then we start getting in, whoops, there goes my earbud. Then we start getting into, the specifics of safety at sea, all the different scenarios that could occur. So we have basic safety training, which covers a lot of this. And so you're understanding, how the vessel works, what safety appliances are available, where they are. We do crowd and crisis management as well. So, how do you deal with hundreds of people who are, freaking out and,
Sure.
Be able to, keep control and help guide people to where they need to go, a lifeboat, their muster station, etc. So we do all that training as well. Yep.
It's like joining the military.
Oh,
or even harder.
Yeah, no, and people liken the medical to being in the military. I hear that all the time. I mean,
right.
It's super comprehensive. Yeah. So a lot of people, unfortunately, they'll get hired, but then have to do the medical and has to get approved prior to joining. And if it's denied, that's it. I mean, there's really nothing that can be done. And typically it's valid for 2 years, unless you've got some sort of pre-existing condition that, allowance has been made for, then it's 1 year. So you're constantly renewing it as well. Same with a lot of this training. Some of it is valid for a very long time, like security awareness, for instance, like understanding possible terrorist threats and things like that, how the ship responds, how to prevent these things, versus my basic safety training, which I'm renewing every 5 years.
Sure.
Firefighting. Oh, I did
Wow.
renewal last year in Florida. It was so much fun. Because the first time I did all my training was on board, so there were certain aspects of it I couldn't actually do, like putting out actual fires. Versus when I renewed it on land, I was like full gear.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Very handsome firefighters showing me the way. It was great.
That is amazing. Yeah. I mean, and with all that training that you do, if you jump to a different brand or company, do you have to go through all the training over again? So let's say you've just did training for a cruise ship. Can it be applied to the next contract with a different company?
Generally speaking, yes. It depends where the ship is flagged, though, and their requirements. Yeah.
Okay.
So for instance, Azamara's vessels are flagged in Malta, and so when I did all my initial training, it was as stipulated by the flag of Malta. And then when I moved over to Explora for a bit as an entertainment manager, still flagged under Malta. I had to renew just because things had expired, but it was essentially the exact same stuff that I had to demonstrate ability with or clearance with in terms of the medical. Yeah. But then you get into the more nitty gritty training that most of this starts to happen on board, or you'll have an online learning platform because you're constantly training and expanding your knowledge even once you're on board. And so, for instance, brand specific things, like how we interact with our guests, what our company stands for, stuff like that. Yeah. Or
what you can't do, all that stuff.
Yeah. And also there's a lot of location specific training too. For instance, my last contract, I went to Antarctica for the first time. And anyone going through Antarctica, the vessels are under a lot of strict regulation because it's such a protected area. And, it's for good reason. But it means you as a crew member, need to understand, the environmental protection measures, what you can and cannot do out on deck, all those little tiny things. Yeah.
And I think what's unique to hearing all this, just for our viewers, being just a cruiser and going on a cruise, they don't even understand that you as staff have to go through all this stuff just to keep everybody, happy and the safety part of, what you're doing, which leads me down the path of the next question, because I read this online about that you got to go on a cruise and pay for a cruise and be a cruiser yourself recently, or
yes, very recently, like last month.
So
yes.
I would love to hear. Okay, let's switch gears for 2 seconds. What was that like? Because being on the other side has to be unique, because I'm sure you're looking at everything a different way.
All the entertainment.
So tell us a little bit about that. Like did you get to relax first of all? Because you have to flip that switch.
It was funny because so when I went back to the Azamara Quest to sail and did this beautiful itinerary from Barcelona to Rome and back as a guest, I hadn't been gone for the vessel for very long. I'd been gone for about 3 weeks. So I still knew everyone on board.
So it was the same vessel.
It was the same vessel I had just been working on. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So there were a few moments where I got pulled into cruise director mode, just to help with some internal things. And I was like, okay, because it's family, and family.
It's like you can never leave.
Yeah, no. It's always funny. There's always a moment when you're typically a crew member, and then you go back on a vessel, and people know you, and they're used to seeing you as a crew member, not as a passenger. Like particularly in the bars and things like that, and you have to tell people explicitly, hey, I'm actually here on vacation. I'm not working. I am entitled to this free alcohol right now. Thank you. Like,
oh my God, I can have more than points.
You're looking at her like, ooh, report her.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That is good. I was thinking the same. Yeah, and I wasn't sure when I read it whether you went on the same cruise line or. But that's even crazier because you would see all the people that you work with. So did you get to enjoy yourself?
Fun. Oh, I did. I had so much fun. I was like living my best life. It was, and I got to do things that I could just never fit into my schedule, and And actually, of course, depending on your rank on board, you have different privileges. So where you can go and when and so forth. And so
Sure.
even as a cruise director, even though I've got a lot of privileges in guest areas, there's still restrictions.
Sure.
And like, one of the little things that, made such a difference when I was a guest is the Windows Cafe, which is like the main buffet on Azamara. There's a beautiful outdoor dining space called the Sunset Bar that adjoins it. And
Okay.
as a cruise director, I don't have any privileges to go out there. But then suddenly as a
Sure.
guest, like I can just casually take my
How was
plate
that?
of buffet food out and watch the sunset as we depart Barcelona. Those little moments that just like build this beautiful cruising experience, and the
So as a
things that I
cruiser,
could
you
never
enjoyed
do.
it. Yeah, I mean,
Loved it.
and the thing is, you also probably did you get off at all the ports? You didn't stay on the ship and
did.
work.
No, I was barely on the ship. That's the other crazy
Okay,
thing.
good.
Well, and it gives you, and even like, I love getting the experience from the other side, because then the experience I get, then I can bring to the other side when I go back into
love
cruise
that.
directing
Yeah.
and think about the guest flow and think about, okay, here I am. What do I want right now? What do I want to do? What do I wish was different about how things have been programmed, etc. It allows you to just kind of step out of the crazy and then just be like in the other side where
Oh,
things
I
are
get it's like
serene and lovely.
I mean, we have a good comparison. So back in the day, Rachel and I used to just, we would play together because she's a musician, I'm a musician, like in a wedding band. And basically, I was the musical director. So now when we go to a wedding, I'm just like, I gotta fix this. It's wrong. And she's like, sit down, get in your chair.
Exactly.
You want to get a pool back,
another.
rein it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just really curious about that because that's a really, really cool thing that you get to do because you see both sides of it. And that's amazing. So currently, what is up next for you for your next contract? Like, do you know what it is? You know?
What shit?
I do.
What
I
a
do.
team.
Some exciting stuff. Okay, so actually, well, I guess depending when the viewers are watching this,
Yeah, I mean, this should be like,
Yes.
pretty soon.
pretty soon.
Like 30 days, 45 days, something
30,
like
40,
that.
45 days. Well, June 20th, I am embarking the Azamara Onward in Southampton.
Okay.
And I'm going to be on board for 2 months sailing Northern Europe and actually going to a
wow.
lot of new places for me. This is an area that I have sailed very little in. So this came up very recently, actually. Because after that, actually, August 20th, I'm joining the Azamara Journey in Athens, and I'll be sailing in Greece and Turkey into mid-September. So I knew about that, but this new field just popped up. This thing with ships, expect the unexpected. Just
And it
get
seems
the
like you
random
love
WhatsApp message.
and you love the company and the brand of ships
I
that
do.
you're on.
I do very
And
much, yeah.
That's have you ever thought about going on the gigantic ships like the big Royal Caribbean? Has that ever like piqued your interest?
I would like to experience it as a guest, very much.
There you
guest
go.
experience. I don't know though if I would want to work as a cruise director on a monster vessel, and I say this because for me, the reason I keep going back to ships time and time again is for the community,
Sure.
the community with the crew, the community with the guests. And so when I'm on a smaller vessel, I feel like I can actually get to know people versus, this is not to say that you can't do that on a bigger ship, but I imagine
No, but
it is
I
much
could see it
harder.
being more difficult. Yeah, because those things
Yeah.
are like cities, moving around.
Exactly.
The ship that you're on just seems it's just like gives you more of a you get more of an experience with all the guests because you're a little more close to them.
You are, and
I think from a guest, it's probably even, in my opinion, maybe a better experience because you might get a little more attention and also too, maybe you can tell us. It seems like those ships get to go some places the bigger ships cannot.
Exactly. It's a huge one. I mean, with Azamara in particular, they're all about late stays, overnight stays in ports, going to the
Sure.
ports that a monster ship would take a 2 hour bus ride to get you into. Places like
Exactly.
Seville, because we can actually go down the river.
Right.
Bangkok, another great example. We can dock right in Bangkok because we can fit down the
Wow.
river, and so it's a completely different cruise experience. But that said, this is the beauty of the cruise industry right now is that it's becoming more and more niche. And there really is something for everyone. Like when I sailed with my sister, oh gosh, this was last fall, I think it was. We took like a girls' cruise together. Where did we go? We went to Virgin. Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Are you serious?
Yes. And we had the time of our life. Yes. And it was like the
That's
whole festival atmosphere, like, yeah,
the
all the
party.
like, millennial inside jokes. I was like, I was living for it. We came this close to getting
Oh my.
tattoos on board,
Oh, you were in it.
Yeah. Yes. And but I've talked to so many, of my guests in Azamara who went, when they launched, hated it. Absolutely hated it. And I was like, well,
Oh,
yes,
wow.
it's not geared towards like the baby boomer experience. Like
And do
there
you
were other
find it?
lines for you.
Do you find it
and that's
hard
great.
shutting? Oh yeah, I mean it's different. It's got to be my thing would be, do you find it when you're on those cruises as a guest to shut it off, not being the working
None of your-
element and not looking at everything because just as being in the music business, I'm always looking at the drummer, I'm always looking at the musical director, and I'm constantly, I can't shut it off, but that's me. How about yourself? Like,
Yeah, I'm guilty of that too. I am. But
yeah,
I think actually though, what I find even more than that though, is that it's made me more empathetic to the crew
sure.
because I
Yeah.
know what they're going through. I know what's going on behind the scenes. And you treat the crew differently. You do. You do.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
doubt about it. So how about staying in touch with your friends and life on this ship because, you're limited to whether a certain amount of alcohol you can drink or your internet, like how does all that work, in your world? How do you.
This is the challenge. It is, and this is where ship life isn't for everyone.
Correct.
I mean, I benefit from I'm a Pisces sun, Aquarius rising, Sagittarius moon, so like
Okay.
travel, and I'm very independent, so I don't feel the same ties to people on land that I need to, nurture every day. That said, I am married. I try my best with my husband, but
Yes.
he's a double Aquarius, so he's doing his own thing. It's all fine. And actually, I'm glad you brought up alcohol because this is a place that is, very strictly regulated on board. I mean, you can
Of
have a blood
course.
alcohol content of like up to 0.02%, which is depending
Yeah.
on your size,
And I
one
hear
drink,
they're really
maybe
strict, like
two,
yeah.
random breathalyzing, all of this. Yeah, because again, it comes back to safety.
Of
An
course.
emergency could happen at any time. I've had
course.
fires in the middle of the night. I mean, like God forbid, you were drunk and couldn't respond to your safety.
Yeah, they're
position. I mean,
relying
no,
on you.
it can't happen. It can't happen. Yeah, it's really important. So you do sacrifice a lot of personal freedoms working on board. Absolutely,
Right.
you do. So you really do need to love what is amazing about it out there: the travel, the community. This unique experience of being thrust into a floating village with people from all around the world. And ships serve as such a beautiful model of how people from different backgrounds and nationalities can all get along in such an incredible way and learn from each other.
It's really amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
And-
it really
and-
is. But yeah.
How about the food? Everybody asks
Yeah,
that
the
question.
food.
How do you like the food?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I've experienced a big range on this, I have to tell you. So I'm fortunate in my position. I'm able to dine in guest venues a lot
that's
as well.
beautiful.
So,
Okay.
so I mix it up. But again, because usually it takes longer to dine in a guest venue. So if I'm, tight on time, I'm going to dine in crew venues.
Of course.
So what we have in our ship is 2 areas where crew eat. So we have a staff mess, which is geared towards officers, but anyone can eat there. It more or less, it's the cuisine that is geared towards the nationalities of the officers on board. So it tends to be a little more Western, Eurocentric, that there's always a great salad bar. There's usually, a lot of protein, like there'll be a chicken option, a fish option, a beef option, a pork option, lots of vegetable sides, because there are a lot of rules that cruise lines are required to follow
Sure.
that stipulate you have to be providing, nutritious foods and, hit a certain quota. There's no alcohol served where we have our meals. The alcohol
Okay.
strictly in the crew bar, and that's separate. Then we also have a crew mess. Again, crew officers, anyone can be there. But again, it's just kind of a general designation of what the food tends to be. So again, reflective of the nationalities of the crew. So this is where you get amazing curries from India,
Oh, that's awesome.
Indonesia, the Filipino foods, the crazy like buns with like the butter and the cheese on them, and the
Yeah.
sugar and icing things. And yeah.
And then
Yeah.
speaking of food, that leads me to the next question. Once you eat your food, do they have special gyms that you can go work out at?
Yes.
Do they have your own gym, or do you get to use the guest gym? How does that work?
Again, that it depends on your position. In my position, I have the ability to use the guest gym, typically
Okay.
out of peak hours, when it's really quiet. Port days, primarily, I would never go on a sea day, because it's very busy. Occasionally I can jump in on a fitness class, if it's quiet. But honestly, I'm so busy, I don't have time to go to the guest gym. So if I'm getting in a workout, I'm going down to the crew gym, which is, often not of the same shishiness, of the
Right,
guest
of
gym,
course.
but it is
Right.
very
Gets
functional.
the job done.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I have one of my assistant cruise directors, Justin, is a big fan of the Insanity workout series. And on my
Right.
last contract, like he was holding me to it. We were like doing hour-long, plyometric body weight workouts every day.
Wow.
I'm going to be seeing him shortly. Yes, and
That is
Those are
amazing.
intense.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're intense workouts. That's
Yeah,
great that
it's-
you get to do that and have that all, accessible to you, because I'm
Yes.
sure, that for us or anybody, exercising is super important. And,
Super important.
especially when you're working that many hours, it just gives you that extra boost of energy. And I think I read something online about you again, which I love, is like no big meals before performing, but I need my caffeine and need to stay hydrated. It's the same exact way for me. I need that espresso or a cappuccino or something like that before performing. I cannot eat and perform. So, and the fact that I see even, people can go online and find you, and you give great tips. I have to commend you for that. Even like breathing exercises for singing and stuff like that. It's just amazing that you really share that with everybody online. I just love that. And, I think you're just so rounded in what you do. It's amazing. And your next, your contract, I don't think you said is how long. I'm not even sure if we caught how long that contract's going to be.
It'll be 3 months total.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what's the longest contract that they get to offer, somebody in the entertainment world?
Ooh, I've seen cast members do up to 11 months, which is,
Oh, really?
not that's definitely on the upper end. That's extreme. 9 months, I would say, for a cast member, more typical on the upper end. 6 months, the most common. I would say musicians are typically doing 4 to 6. In my position now, for me to go over 4 months would be atypical.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like most of the time when I go out now, I'm doing between 2 and 3 months.
And
Yeah.
at this point in
Which is
your
a nice
career, I think you mentioned you get the calls. So you don't necessarily have to go chasing them as much as maybe you did when you first started out.
Oh, it's great. It's great. So nice.
Now, do you get calls? Is it from is there agents that you use, or is it from the actual ships themselves?
Yeah, this is a mixed, again, depending what you're doing. So when I get a call, for instance, to come and do a cruise director contract, I'm getting that from the director of entertainment in the ship office in Miami. So it's coming directly from them. If I'm going out as a guest entertainer, I work with an agent. I'm with Blackburn International.
Okay.
They're headquartered just outside of London. My agent is in Vegas, Gary.
Okay.
And so he's the one that is pitching the artists on the roster to the bookers for the cruise line guest entertainer spots. And those bookers aren't necessarily with even the cruise line. They might be with an independent production company that acts
Okay,
as,
gotcha.
a middle person, liaison between the agent, and the ship. Yeah, for instance, Azamara, our guest entertainers come through RWS Productions, which is based in New York. RWS also builds our production shows, does all the casting for our production casts as well.
Oh, that's amazing. So outside of the cruise ship, tell us anything on land that you have coming up. Is there some neat stuff that you're working on? Or are you going to get to visit some friends? I think, when you're on land, you probably want to do everything. Go visit friends, go wherever,
Oh, it's so true. I mean, long haul
what do I do
flights are
first?
like nothing now. Like I've gotten into my long haul flow. Like just in the past month alone, I've crossed the Atlantic 4 times, and I have one more
my
coming up in a
God.
few days. Yeah, so I'm spending a few weeks in Lisbon, connecting with friends, vacationing, learning some Portuguese. I really want to learn how to sing fado. I was in Lisbon at the end of my last contract, and then just like was blown away by the art form. So
Is that amazing? We were just there, actually.
Yeah,
So-
love Lisbon. Yeah.
so amazing.
Rach-
Such an incredible city.
Yeah, Rachel's from Brazil, so she's speaking Portuguese to everybody, and
Oh, that's incredible. Oh,
Yeah.
it is a challenging language. I,
It is. It's
for you.
yeah, it's deceivingly. Yeah.
Deceivingly, yeah. When I mentioned to a Portuguese friend that I wanted to learn how to sing fado, and he was like, "You need to learn the language. The number one thing is you
Yeah.
got to feel it." And I was like, "Oh." Is there like a voice teacher who can just teach me? No one teaches it. You have to feel it. I'm like, okay.
Oh,
Yeah. So, yes. And so when I finished my contract, some cool stuff coming up. I actually, as a result of my cruise ship work and, posting performances online, I was scouted by a big time classical crossover producer,
Amazing.
Romina Arena, who works with Josh Groban, Andrea Bocelli and the like, Daniel Emmett.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so she approached me about doing an EP. Actually, I think it's becoming an album now. It's expanding
Wow.
rapidly.
That's
So we
great.
originally-
They always do.
They always do. It's funny that. So it's going to be a mix of covers of originals. In fact, I've started writing.
Oh, that's
I wrote
what
a
I want to ask
song-
you. Are
we
you
were
writing?
talking about writing. Yeah, this is a new world for me. Years of like having fragments that I'd write down here and bit, but never following anything through. And then finally, I was actually on board, and I spent half an hour writing a song, and I'm really, really proud of it.
Oh,
so it's
that's
gonna go
so
on the
exciting.
album. Yeah,
It's such a great outlet to be able to write a song, and then go record it, which is just great. You'll have to let us know, and we'll promote it for you. But
thank
that's
you.
super
I'm
exciting. So how long do you think? Are you going to get started on it pretty soon, or?
Yeah, well, originally we were going to go into studio this summer in Rome, but then these fills came up, so we've shifted everything. So I'll get off in Athens, spend a little time in Athens. I got a gig in New Orleans, and then come like mid-October, the plan is to liaise in Los Angeles, get into her studio there. And then go from there. So
And where do you reside? Are you in Canada now?
no, I'm in New York City. I'm in
You're in
Manhattan.
New York City.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is
Yeah.
this where
Yeah.
is this a full-time residency for you now?
This is, yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I'm barely here, but in theory,
Of course.
yes.
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is,
yeah. That's where you hang your.
This is
That is
where I
the mailing
change-
address.
Yeah, exactly. It's like where I unpack my suitcase so I can pack my suitcase. That's what
Of course. Yes. How do
Yeah,
you
no,
like
it's-
New York? Being from Canada.
Oh gosh, so my husband is a New Yorker. He's from Long Island, and he's
Oh,
also a
okay.
singer. He sings full time with the Metropolitan Opera in the chorus.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and he's also the president of the American Guild of Musical Artists. So he's very ensconced here, but gets his summers off, which allows him to come sail with me or go wherever I am.
That's great.
Yeah, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with New York. I will be honest with you. Like, it is, the whole world is here. I mean, it is a cross-section of the universe. It's incredible. But I find, and again, I've been ruined by ships. I find New York, because it's so transient and so fast-paced, particularly in the arts community, people coming and going all the time, hustling so hard. I find it hard to establish like a rock-solid community here. One that, is comparable to what I have found out at sea. which also seems kind of ironic because, of course, ship life is also incredibly fast paced and has its own transiency and, is always changing and people are coming and going. But
it's just a little different. Yeah, New York's a big place, It is, yes. I'm originally from Philadelphia, so basically I get it. New York was right down the street, so I understand it's just giant. And coming, we were just in Lisbon, and it's just like, that's completely the opposite. It's just laid back, you're having dinner, nobody's bothering you. It's just very, very, it's a different world. So, but that's exciting that, you're getting to do everything. It seems like you're getting to do everything that you want to do, your own music, you get to do the stuff on the cruise ships, and it's constantly a nonstop, one contract to another, a day off to see my friends, and then I'm right back at it, which to me, it's a very, very cool life. It's a different life. I don't know that a lot of people could do that because you have to be extremely organized, I think, and, with a schedule that, I have to stick to it. This is what I'm going to do.
And the personality, like you said, it's not for everybody, and life circumstances and things, but who it's for, these people need to just enjoy and take as much of the benefits as they can, and grab that opportunity if it's the right fit.
Couple more questions for you, because this has been amazing. Thank you so much. But I'm just curious, as far as for our own audience, what are some of your favorite places that you've stopped at and have seen, and places maybe you could recommend to the audience? Oh, you have to go here because it's life-changing, or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a few. I always say the best sailing, I think, is where you have to go by ship. So I think just some of the most spectacularly beautiful sailing I've done is in the Adriatic in Croatia. Huge fan of cruising there, and places that you really need to be accessing by ship, Dubrovnik and Split. And the water there in particular, because it's rock bottom, not sandy, so it's crystal clear. It just, have you done Croatia?
No.
On the list.
And the food and the wine, they're making incredible wine in Croatia. And a lot of it, they don't export. You just have to be in Croatia. Yeah. Big fan of Croatia. In terms of a port that just changed my life, Myanmar. I went to Yangon and docked there, and this was part of a world cruise that was being done on the Azamara journey, and the people, just rays of light, some of the kindest, warmest people I've ever met on the planet, and the temples are extraordinarily beautiful, just take you right up into the heavens, unlike anything I've ever experienced on this planet.
We're definitely gonna have to try that. I'm sold already. Yeah. I can't wait to, there's just so many places in the world to see. It's nonstop. So if you could travel full time, that would be a nice job. But you get to do that,
It's about there.
If you get to get off every time and just relax and not work, and you see so many people nowadays are selling their homes and just, living on a cruise ship. It's like the newest thing. I don't know if it's so new, but it's like you see more and more of that. And you see also the cruise ships offering it and promoting it. And it's just a different way of life now, I think, for a lot of people.
And particularly with the digital nomads now. I've seen not Royal Virgin really capping on this. And then they've got like a subscription model for sailing now for the digital nomads. Also, their Wi-Fi is great. So you could conceivably do that. I would not suggest the digital nomads come to Azamara. Our Wi-Fi is a little behind the times, but we encourage unplugging and experiencing that way.
Yeah, that's a different mindset. We totally, and the technology, from different cruise lines and cruise ships has grown, where, that's a great thing, because back in the day, I was just saying this to Rachel, it was like, we'd be waiting for the YouTube pages to load, and it was just like, any day now. And I know I'm being charged for this. And now it's so quick, with the, I think it's a Starlink or whatever satellites they have now on the ships. It's just incredible, the technology, and even the technology on the ships is just amazing. Every time they come out with a new ship, it just it's really a changing industry, and I love the fact that it's nonstop and it's really moving quick.
It is.
So give us some crazy stories. Give us something as you've seen on a cruise ship that you're just like, oh my god, I have not seen this with, whether it's anything. We'd love to get that kind of crazy quick story.
Well,
it's got to be one.
Oh, there were a few. The first one that comes to mind is so Azamara will often charter their vessels, and so we'll have a group or organization basically buy out the ship, for the entire voyage. So it's entirely theirs. No one can buy tickets to that particular itinerary. And one of the groups that we frequently bring on is Desire. Desire is a swinger group. Yes.
Oh my God. Are you kidding? Oh my God. The upside down pineapples and all that good stuff.
That's it. That's how I learned about the upside down pineapple. Yes.
Yeah. We've just recently learned about all that.
Yes. And so, we create a safe, welcoming space for people to come and, practice their lifestyles. I mean, we do charters like for swingers. We have a great Olivia, the lesbian travel group. They will come on and do charters and always so moving, because you have people coming to the ship who, have particular desires and lifestyle choices that they don't necessarily feel they can safely express or follow through with on land for fear of, judgment and community, whatever the reasons may be.
Yeah.
And so it is wild, to like get these people on board but then, the things people are capable of. Wow, it's very creative. God. Humans, very creative. So we will, convert spaces into like designated playrooms, for certain adult activities and things. And there's the crew is trained, like how,
sure, of course,
to be as respectful as possible and to be, a little forewarned about
certain
things.
Seeing activities.
We will do nudist charters, so that, yes, again, and funny enough, that's often a little easier.
Once
you adjust,
sure.
It's like, this is just normal,
Yeah. I mean, and you know what? I like the fact that they do offer that, because everybody does have different lifestyles, and it's great that, and you see more and more of that, coming to light these days. And, we love seeing that. I think that's great. Yeah. So I'm sure you get to see a lot with those different cruises. That's great. I mean, before I forget, I would love for you to promote, your socials, or where people can find you, or what you have coming up, and we'll list it all. So it's all yours. Just promote whatever you want to promote.
Sure. Well, I mean, the best way to keep in touch, I'd say Instagram is my main social venue at tanya.c.roberts. Also TikTok, same handle at tanya.c.roberts. Facebook, you can find my page, Tanya Roberts Soprano. Website, tanya-roberts.com if you're looking for more nitty-gritty of the backgrounds and, the press kits. And I just added a new feature, actually, a Where in the World is Tanya? So it's an embedded Google Calendar. Of like every day by day, what city.
Do you ever do any live streaming from the ship or anything like that?
Just because of the Wi-Fi, I tend not to do live streaming, but I do try to record performances every time, and then
you have
get
great
that into
content.
Digestible clips and up.
Everybody go check her socials out, because she has amazing content. I spent, I think, a few hours on it. Very informative. I know. I looked up. I said, "Where did my time go?" No. Honestly, I learned a lot. I was telling Rachel, I was like, just you being just such a breath of fresh air, just really, really creative, and just a talent. It's really, we love that. We love seeing and meeting people like that,
and other musicians and things. So you do get sucked in, just like breathing exercises and then the different activities. So it's all relatable.
So is there anything that you would like to, to promote beside your socials, or is there anything maybe we missed that maybe you want to tell the audience? We did cover a lot of stuff.
We did indeed. No, I guess just to keep in touch. My website, you can sign up for a newsletter. I'm going to get that going. And, particularly as the album progresses and we see what comes out of that, hopefully, some live performance dates will stem from that as well. A little touring on land.
I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And if you're in New York, maybe if you have some shows, we'll come find you.
Yes.
And we'll be in the audience. That would be amazing. But yeah, I mean, this has been amazing. Rachel, do you have anything else to add?
No, that's great. We're definitely going to follow up from when you release your book with all of the amazing information on letting other entertainers, whether it be singers or dancers, know that there's this amazing opportunity opening up and growing. Yeah. So if somebody's feeling creatively stuck or in a rut with their musical style, I always encourage, even playing in a wedding band, it forced me to learn genres that I would have never looked at or considered. And this is so much more on a different level with all the cultures and things that you just can't get on land. So I'm really excited for that. And we'll definitely follow up with your album because we'd love to have you back and check that out.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. That was a great episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Great guests. We're super excited. Each week we're going to bring you a new interview with cruise staff featuring entertainers, cruise chefs, cruise directors, bartenders, whoever we can find, as well as cruisers themselves to tell their individual stories. And we're going to have special guest celebrities. Theme cruises are super big, so we're going to be interviewing a bunch of people. But Rachel, tell them what they need to do to be notified each week.
What do you mean do? They should have did. So if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. That way you don't miss any future episodes. And if you want to watch some of the previous episodes, the best place to do that is our website. And that is cruiseshipexplorers.com.
Okay, everybody, you heard it, cruiseshipexplorers.com. Join us each week. We're super excited. Till the next time, see you then.